Is blindness a barrier? No.
Is deafness a barrier? No.
Are mobility, learning, cognitive disabilities, speech impairments and others, or even a combination of them, barriers? No way. Lack of accessibility is.
Welcome to Web Accessibility for All.
Follow the blind. This journey starts now.
Let's start with a site that passes every accessibility check on the books, but still shuts the door on people with dyslexia, ADHD, or memory and comprehension challenges. That gap is bigger than most teams realize. WCAG 2.2 doesn't close it, and no, we are not going to sit around waiting for WCAG 3. Good news. We don't have to start from zero. COGA, the W3C's task force, has spent almost 10 years building practical patterns that tackle a lot of these. Not everything, but an official, usable head start. So come along, let's discover what COGA can actually do together. Welcome back to Web Accessibility for All.
COGA explained what it is and what it does.
To kick things off, let's define some terms so we are all on the same page. If you hear me say COGA, I'm talking about the W3C Cognitive and Learning Disabilities Accessibility Task Force. That was a long name, wasn't it? The core focus of their work is pretty straightforward, but incredibly important. They are looking at how to improve the accessibility and the overall usability of the digital world for folks with cognitive and learning disabilities. As Lisa Simon-Horowitz, core facilitator from the W3C, once said,
"Unfortunately, there is still a perception that clarity and ease of understanding are not essential for specialized audiences. Too many people still think that complicated writing sounds more sophisticated. We need to convince more people that even academic papers should be easy to read."
Now here is where it gets interesting. Unlike the WCAG, which is normative, meaning that you have to comply, COGA is supplemental guidance.
How COGA turns user needs into design decisions.
Now, before we get to the specifics, let's look at the framework of COGA. At the top, there are 8 main objectives. Below those, you'll find user stories and user needs that explain the actual friction points people experience. Then come the design patterns. These are suggested solutions to those exact problems. On top of all that, COGA gives you personas, scenarios, and guidelines for testing your designs with people who actually have cognitive and learning disabilities.
COGA, its 8 objectives.
1. Help users understand what things are and how to use them.
2. Help users find what they need.
3. Use clear and understandable content.
4. Help users avoid mistakes.
5. Help users focus.
6. Ensure processes do not rely on memory.
7. Provide help and support.
8. Support adaptation and personalization.
Sitting underneath those objectives are 58 design patterns. Each pattern targets a specific barrier and suggests how to overcome it.
3 practical COGA design patterns in practice.
To see how this actually plays out, let's break down 3 specific COGA patterns. They tackle totally different issues.
Enable browser features and extensions.
Now let me tell you about Ashley. Ashley has dyslexia. She uses a text-to-speech extension that highlights each word as it's spoken. It's her lifeline to the digital world. One day, Ashley lands on a website to order supplies for her business. She turns on their extension, but the speech cuts in and out like a broken radio. The highlighting is out of sync. Ashley sighs. She calls the company's support line.
I'm sorry, our website uses a framework that doesn't play well with some extensions. Have you tried just reading the page?
Here is the big issue. Websites can actually block the browser tools and extensions people rely on. It's rarely the technology's fault. It's often clunky code or custom interfaces getting in the way. This pattern is about supporting the everyday tools people depend on. Sure, there are valid security reasons to restrict some tools, but those limits should only exist when absolutely necessary.
Avoid too much content.
When I first started doing web design, I used to cram everything in. Yes, links, banners, buttons, sidebars, carousels, a lot of things. Back then I was convinced I was being comprehensive. Later, when I went blind and became familiar with accessibility complaints, I discovered I was wrong. One time not long before, I was doing user testing with a participant who had ADHD. She faced the same difficulties as me, but this time in a physical way.
This is too much. I can't find anything. My brain is screaming at me.
She clicked around endlessly, then closed the browser.
I can't do this. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose.
When it comes to design, this pattern is all about keeping the number of main choices small. You want to remove any content that isn't absolutely necessary for the user's current task. The good rule of thumb from COGA is to keep main choices to 5 or fewer. But don't get trapped by the number. It's not a strict law, but you get the idea. The objective is simply to make important information easy to find without the overwhelm. You still need to give users enough information to get the job done. Because if you present too many unnecessary choices, you instantly increase the cognitive load.
Personalized and familiar interfaces.
I want to challenge something I hear all the time.
We don't need to support personalization. Users can just use their browser settings.
Let me tell you about James. James had a traumatic brain injury. He set his browser to large, high-contrast text with generous line spacing. It's the only way he can read comfortably. James lands on a new website. The site ignores his browser settings. The text is now small. What happened to James points to a massive issue we see all the time. People constantly lean on their operating system settings, own browser tweaks, and custom extensions to force a digital interface to actually work for them. This pattern is entirely about designing your site so a user's preferences actually work. You need to support the elements they rely on: font size, line height, spacing, contrast, familiar symbols, and autocomplete. Remember this: personalization is about making an interface familiar and actually usable for user specific needs.
Why you shouldn't choose between COGA and WCAG.
We've been diving deep into COGA patterns, but I can almost hear some of you asking,
Wait, how does this fit with WCAG?
let's talk about the difference between these two frameworks.
WCAG is the technical standard we use to evaluate accessibility conformance.
Yes, but hold on. WCAG is not the law. Always double-check the actual legal requirements that apply specifically to your organization.
So, again, how does COGA fit in with WCAG?
Simply put, COGA is a supplement, not a straight standard. Bring in COGA when you want to go deeper and fix the barriers that need extra attention.
Hold on, why should I care about COGA if it's not even a formal standard yet?
You're right. COGA is not an official standard, but we still can't ignore it. There's a big difference between checking technical boxes and real accessibility. The site can pass an audit and still be really hard for some people to use. That's why COGA matters. It helps us catch cognitive and learning barriers that standard reviews miss.
A practical path forward with WCAG and COGA.
If you want a realistic way to handle this, take the middle path. First, look down what your legal and contractual requirements actually are. Then use WCAG as your baseline. After that, use COGA to find the cognitive barriers that need extra love. And keep an eye on WCAG-free development as well.
Testing COGA patterns in practice.
That gets right at why people hesitate with COGA. Yes, WCAG is kind of predictable, simple if you want. Run a tool or follow a specific manual procedure, get a report, and check the boxes. But with COGA guidelines like use clear language or reduce clutter, you wonder,
How do I test this? Do I need to hire someone with a cognitive disability to sit next to me and check every single page?
let's be practical. The trick is a layered approach.
Layer 1. Heuristic evaluation.
Same as WCAG, COGA requires a mix of testing methods.
Layer 2. Automated tools.
Yes, absolutely. Automated tools can help with things like readability. But be careful. A tool can flag a long sentence, but it can't tell you if it actually makes sense. It won't know if your navigation is confusing or if users can actually finish their task. Use tools to save time, but don't mistake an automated report for real cognitive accessibility check.
Layer 3. User testing, but done right.
Time to address the elephant in the room. Yes, eventually you need to test with real people with cognitive disabilities. But don't worry, it's not as intimidating as it sounds. You don't need a massive formal study. The goal is representation. You just want testers who reflect your actual users, whether they face memory, attention, or language challenges. Finally, be flexible. As the W3C points out,
your testing methods need to adapt for the people taking part.
So how do we actually run these sessions?
keep your methods really clear. Ask short, simple questions and check in often to make sure they are comfortable. Be ready to offer support like taking a break or changing the format. Above all, remember, you are testing the interface, not the person. If someone struggles with a task, that's just your design showing you where it needs work.
Wrapping up.
cognitive accessibility is a mindset. COGA 58 design patterns are just tools. The real work is learning to think like the user. Accessibility is about understanding minds. It's about building for the real world, where people have different brains, different capacities, and different needs. Thank you for listening. Now go, make the web a place where every mind can thrive. Goodbye.
Thanks for joining us today. Subscribe for a new challenge next week. And don't be shy. Leave us a review or ask your accessibility questions online. See you next week for another episode of Web Accessibility for All.